She kicked her right in the stomach. A pregnant woman, begging for food at her wedding. Not just any woman, her own mother. Amara thought she was removing trash from her perfect day. She didn't know the beggar carried the same blood running through her veins. She thought wealth had made her untouchable. But what she did in front of 300 guests shattered everything. The woman looked up from the ground, blood on her lips, and whispered, "You have no idea what you've just done, my daughter." Now the bride isn't just cruel, she's a daughter who just assaulted the mother who gave her life. And everyone is watching. Some secrets can't stay buried forever. Golden sunlight streams through the towering windows of Lagos's most exclusive event center, casting ethereal beams across silk drapes and crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. The air thrums with the intoxicating blend of expensive perfumes, roasted lamb, and the sweet scent of imported roses flown in from Dubai just for this moment. Amara adjusts her custom-made gown, $40,000 of hand-sewn pearls and Italian lace, while photographers capture every angle of her flawless beauty. She's not just a bride today, she's a queen ascending her throne. But beneath that perfect smile lurks something darker, something that wealth and beauty can't quite mask. The venue pulses with celebration as 300 of Nigeria's elite fill every corner, their designer outfits creating a rainbow of affluence and status. Traditional drummers pound out ancient rhythms while modern DJ equipment amplifies the bass until guests feel it vibrating through their chests. Ice sculptures shaped like swans slowly melt beside towers of champagne glasses that catch the light like liquid diamonds. Waiters in crisp white uniforms weave through the crowd carrying silver platters loaded with delicacies, pepper soup that costs $50 a bowl, suya beef seasoned with spices worth their weight in gold. This isn't just a wedding. It's a display of power that makes everyone present feel like they're witnessing royalty. Yet something feels off, like storm clouds gathering on a sunny day. Amara glides through her guests, her train sweeping behind her like liquid mercury, accepting congratulations and air kisses that never quite touch her carefully applied makeup. Her laughter tinkles like wind chimes, practiced and perfect, while her eyes scan the crowd with the calculating gaze of someone who measures worth in bank statements and social media followers. She pauses at a mirror, adjusting a strand of hair that dares to escape perfection, and whispers to her reflection about how she's finally arrived at the life she always deserved. The woman staring back has everything: beauty, wealth, status, a handsome husband, but her eyes hold the cold glint of someone who's forgotten what real warmth looks like. Today should be the happiest day of her life. So why does she feel like she's performing in a play where she's forgotten her lines? The reception hall echoes with the sounds of pure indulgence, crystal glasses clinking, expensive heels clicking on marble floors, and the rustle of silk and satin as Lagos's social elite mingle and gossip. Children of oil executives chase each other between tables while their mothers discuss vacation homes in London and Dubai, their voices carrying the casual arrogance of people who've never known real struggle. The cake alone, 7 tiers of French vanilla and Belgian chocolate, stands like an edible monument to excess, surrounded by enough flowers to stock a florist shop for a month. Every detail has been meticulously planned, every moment choreographed to perfection, because in Amara's world, image is everything and flaws are unforgivable. But the most expensive decorations can't hide the emptiness in her smile, and the loudest music can't drown out the whispers about what kind of person she really is. Security guards dressed in black suits stand at strategic points around the venue, their eyes constantly scanning for anything that might disturb this carefully orchestrated fantasy. They've been given strict instructions: no uninvited guests, no photographers without credentials, and absolutely no one who might bring down the tone of this elite gathering. The guest list reads like a who's who of Nigerian society, each name representing millions in net worth and decades of carefully cultivated social climbing. Amara has spent years building her way into this circle, using her beauty and calculated charm to open doors that money alone couldn't breach. She's worked too hard to reach this pinnacle to let anyone or anything threaten her moment of triumph. But outside these gilded walls, the real world is pressing in, and it's about to crash through her defenses in the most shocking way possible. The afternoon sun begins to shift, casting longer shadows across the polished floors as the celebration reaches its peak intensity. Laughter grows louder, fueled by expensive wine and the intoxicating feeling of belonging to Nigeria's upper crust. Traditional praise singers move through the crowd, their voices weaving stories of success and prosperity while guests spray crisp Naira notes into the air like confetti. Amara basks in every compliment, every envious glance, every whispered comment about how she's living the dream that so many others desperately chase. This is her moment, her validation, her proof that she's transcended her humble beginnings and earned her place among the elite. She has no idea that in just minutes, everything she's built, everything she believes about herself, is about to come crashing down in the most devastating way imaginable. The final toast of the formal ceremony concludes with thunderous applause, and Amara raises her crystal flute high above her head, letting the bubbles catch the light as she savors this moment of absolute triumph. The photographer captures her radiant smile from every angle, documenting what should be the pinnacle of her perfect life. But as the champagne touches her lips, a commotion near the entrance draws her attention. Security guards are arguing with someone, their voices sharp with irritation. She can't quite make out what's happening from across the vast hall, but she notices heads turning and conversations pausing as something disrupts the carefully maintained atmosphere of her celebration. Her perfectly manicured fingers tighten around the champagne flute as a cold premonition creeps up her spine. Something is wrong, something that threatens to shatter this flawless day, and she's about to discover that all the money in the world can't protect you from the consequences of a heartless soul. The security guards' voices grow sharper as they block the main entrance, their powerful frames creating a human wall against whatever disturbance threatens to penetrate this sanctuary of wealth. Through the gaps between their bodies, guests catch glimpses of something that doesn't belong in their world: tattered fabric, worn shoes, and the desperate movements of someone who hasn't eaten in days. The contrast is jarring, like seeing a shadow in a room full of light, and it sends ripples of discomfort through the crowd of perfectly dressed socialites. Whispers spread like wildfire as necks crane to get a better look at whatever has caused this disturbance. The music continues to play, but the energy shifts, becoming tense and uncertain, as if everyone senses that their carefully constructed bubble is about to burst. Kemi's swollen feet throb with every step as she pushes against the human barrier of security guards, her pregnant belly making it difficult to maintain her balance while they try to force her away from the entrance. Her clothes, once colorful and proud, now hang in tatters that speak of months spent sleeping rough and working any job that would pay enough for a single meal. The fabric clings to her thin frame, revealing the sharp angles of hunger beneath, while her hands shake with the weakness that comes from carrying a child when you can barely feed yourself. She clutches a small, worn purse to her chest, everything she owns in the world, and her eyes hold the desperate gleam of someone who's reached the end of their rope. The guard's hands are rough as they push her back, but she keeps trying to move forward, driven by a need deeper than pride or shame. "Please," she whispers, her voice barely audible above the music and laughter that continues inside. "I just need a little food for my baby." Her words carry the weight of genuine desperation, the kind that strips away pretense and reveals the raw human need that exists beneath society's comfortable surface. She presses one hand to her rounded stomach, where her unborn child moves restlessly, perhaps sensing their mother's distress, while the other reaches toward the abundance she can glimpse through the glass doors. The scents of roasted meat and sweet pastries drift out to torment her, making her stomach clench with hunger pangs that have become her constant companion. Her legs feel weak, threatening to give out beneath her, but she forces herself to keep standing, keep begging, keep hoping that someone will see her as a human being worthy of basic compassion. One of the security guards, a mountain of muscle whose expensive suit can't hide his intimidating presence, leans down to hiss warnings in her ear, his breath hot against her skin as he threatens consequences if she doesn't leave immediately. His words are crude and dismissive, treating her like vermin that needs to be swept away before the important guests notice the disruption. But Kemi has survived too much to be frightened away by threats. She's lived through it. The afternoon heat beats down mercilessly on the concrete outside the air-conditioned venue, making Kemi's thin clothing stick to her skin with perspiration that has nothing to do with the temperature and everything to do with the stress of fighting for survival. She can hear the sounds of celebration growing louder inside, laughter, music, and the casual conversation of people who've never wondered where their next meal would come from. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she glimpses tables groaning under the weight of food that could feed her family for months, waste happening in real time as full plates get cleared away barely touched. Her mouth waters involuntarily at the sight of fresh fruit, roasted vegetables, and meat dishes that represent luxury beyond her wildest dreams. She's not asking for much, just the scraps that would otherwise be thrown away, just enough to quiet the constant hunger that's become the soundtrack of her existence. Inside the venue, some guests begin to notice the commotion at the entrance, their conversations becoming more subdued as they strain to see what's happening beyond the security barrier. A few wealthy matrons exchange knowing looks, their expressions mixing irritation with the kind of cold satisfaction that comes from seeing the boundaries of their exclusive world being properly defended. They murmur to each other about the help, knowing their place, and the importance of keeping undesirable elements away from their children and their celebrations. But scattered among the crowd are faces that show different emotions, guilt, discomfort, and the kind of recognition that comes from remembering what it feels like to be hungry, even if those memories are decades old. The division in the room becomes clear. Those who see Kemi as a problem to be solved, and those who see her as a person in need of help. The tension builds as Kemi's pleas become more desperate, her voice cracking with the effort of making herself heard over the sounds of celebration and the harsh commands of the security team. She tries to explain that she's not dangerous, not crazy, just a pregnant woman who needs help, but her words seem to bounce off the wall of indifference that wealth has built around this gathering. Her swollen ankles wobble as exhaustion threatens to overwhelm her, and for a moment it seems like she might collapse right there on the marble steps, her unborn child the only witness to society's casual cruelty. But then she sees something through the crowd, a flash of white silk and pearls, a figure gliding through the party like a princess in a fairy tale, and recognition dawns in her eyes like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The bride is coming closer, and Kemi's desperation transforms into something else entirely, something that makes the security guards step back despite themselves. This isn't just about food anymore. This is about destiny, and the collision course that's been building for 25 years is finally about to reach its devastating conclusion. Amara's designer heels click against the marble floor like a countdown to disaster as she approaches the disturbance at the entrance, her silk train rustling behind her with the sound of expensive fury. Her perfect smile melts away, replaced by an expression of pure disgust as she takes in the sight of Kemi, pregnant, desperate, and decidedly unwelcome at her pristine celebration. The contrast between them is stark. One woman draped in $40,000 of couture, the other wearing clothes that might have cost $40 when they were new. Amara's nose wrinkles as if she's encountered something foul, and her voice, when she speaks, carries the cutting edge of someone who's never had to beg for anything in her life. The guests behind her slow their conversations, sensing drama about to unfold, their champagne glasses forgotten as they position themselves for the best view of what promises to be a spectacle. "What is this thing doing at my wedding?" Amara's words slice through the air like broken glass, each syllable dripping with contempt that makes several guests shift uncomfortably in their designer shoes. She gestures at Kemi with a perfectly manicured hand, her movement dismissive and dehumanizing, as if she's pointing out a piece of trash that the cleaning crew missed. The security guards straighten at her approach, eager to please the bride and prove their worth by removing this unwanted presence, but something in Kemi's posture, the way she holds herself despite her circumstances, seems to catch their attention. The air thrums with tension as two worlds collide, the privileged bubble of wealth and status against the harsh reality of poverty and desperation. Amara's breath comes faster, her chest rising and falling beneath her beaded bodice as anger overwhelms her usual careful composure. Kemi looks up at the approaching bride, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and something deeper, recognition that none of the onlookers can understand. "Please, sister," she whispers, using the traditional African term of respect and kinship, her voice carrying decades of pain and longing. "I just need a small portion of food. My baby." She places both hands on her swollen belly, the gesture protective and pleading, her words trailing off as she takes in Amara's expression of pure revulsion. The pregnant woman's face shows confusion, as if she can't quite understand how someone could look at a hungry, expectant mother and feel anything but compassion. Her legs tremble with exhaustion and malnutrition, but she forces herself to stay upright, clinging to the hope that human decency might still exist somewhere beneath all that silk and jewelry. The irony is lost on everyone except the universe itself. She's asking her own daughter for mercy and receiving only hatred in return. The bride's face transforms into something ugly, her beauty twisting into a mask of cruelty that shocks even the most cynical guests into silence. "Sister?" Amara's voice rises to a shriek that cuts through the music and laughter, causing heads to turn throughout the venue. "How dare you claim kinship with me, you disgusting beggar? Look at yourself. Filthy, worthless, contaminating my perfect day with your presence." Her words hit like physical blows, each insult carefully chosen to inflict maximum damage, and the venom in her voice makes even the security guards take a step back. She's no longer the elegant bride posing for photographs. She's revealed herself as something far more sinister, someone whose wealth has corrupted her soul so completely that basic human empathy has been stripped away. The guests watch in fascination and horror, like spectators at a car crash, unable to look away from the collision of privilege and desperation. Without warning, Amara draws back her silk-covered leg and delivers a vicious kick to Kemi's pregnant stomach, the impact echoing through the suddenly silent entrance hall like a gunshot. The pregnant woman doubles over, a gasp of pain and shock escaping her lips as she clutches her belly and struggles to maintain her balance. Several guests audibly gasp, their hands flying to their mouths in disbelief, while others look away as if pretending not to see the assault will somehow make it unhappen. The bride's face shows no remorse, only satisfaction at having removed what she sees as a stain on her perfect celebration. Her breathing is heavy with exertion and rage, and for a moment she stands over Kemi like a conqueror surveying a defeated enemy, her white dress stark against the backdrop of her victim's pain. The symbolism is lost on no one. Purity and evil wearing the same color, separated only by the accident of birth and circumstance. Kemi staggers, but doesn't fall, her hands pressed protectively against her unborn child as she fights to stay conscious through the pain radiating from her abdomen. Blood appears at the corner of her mouth where she's bitten her tongue, a bright red drop that stands out starkly against her dark skin like a ruby on velvet. The security guards freeze, uncertain whether to help her or remove her, their training having never covered how to handle a pregnant woman being assaulted by a bride at her own wedding. The silence stretches like a held breath, broken only by the distant sound of music that seems suddenly obscene in the face of such cruelty. Kemi's eyes remain fixed on Amara's face, searching for some flicker of humanity, some sign that the woman who just attacked her might still have a conscience buried beneath all that wealth and arrogance. What she sees instead is emptiness, the hollow stare of someone who has traded their soul for social status and found the bargain surprisingly easy to live with. "Get her out of here before I call the police," Amara commands, her voice steady now that she's satisfied her need for violence, smoothing down her dress as if brushing away an unpleasant memory. She turns to address her guests with a bright smile that doesn't reach her eyes, her mask of perfection sliding back into place with practiced ease. "I apologize for this disruption, everyone. Some people just don't know their place in the world." Her laughter is light and dismissive, inviting her audience to join her in treating the assault as nothing more than an inconvenient interruption to their celebration. But the joke falls flat. Too many people have witnessed something that will haunt their dreams, something that reveals the true cost of maintaining their exclusive world. As she glides back toward her reception, her train trailing behind her like a river of innocence corrupted, Kemi's voice rises from behind her, carrying words that will change everything and everyone who hears them forever. Kemi rises slowly from where the kick has sent her stumbling, her movements deliberate despite the pain shooting through her body, and the quality of silence in the entrance hall changes from shock to something approaching terror. Blood trickles from the corner of her mouth, but her eyes, those eyes that seemed defeated moments ago, now burn with an intensity that makes even the security guard step backward without realizing why. She doesn't wipe away the blood. Instead, she lets it mark her like war paint as she fixes her gaze on Amara's retreating figure. The air itself seems to thicken, charged with an energy that has nothing to do with the expensive sound system or the crystal chandeliers, and everything to do with the kind of power that emerges when justice has been too long delayed. When she speaks, her voice carries across the vast space with supernatural clarity, cutting through conversation and music like a knife through silk. "You have no idea what you've just done." Kemi's words hang in the air like a curse taking shape, each syllable weighted with 25 years of pain and sacrifice that suddenly demands recognition. The guests closest to her feel a chill that has nothing to do with the air conditioning, a primal recognition that they're witnessing something beyond their understanding. Her voice, which moments ago had been weak with hunger and desperation, now resonates with authority that makes millionaires and oil executives pay attention despite themselves. She straightens to her full height, and somehow, despite her tattered clothing and swollen belly, she seems to tower over everyone present, including the bride who thought wealth made her untouchable. The transformation is so complete that several guests wonder if they're hallucinating, if the stress of witnessing such cruelty has somehow altered their perception of reality itself. "My daughter." The final words crash over the crowd like a tsunami of revelation, turning whispered conversations into stunned silence and comfortable assumptions into shattered fragments. Amara freezes mid-stride, her hand clutching her train so tightly that her knuckles turn white beneath her perfectly applied nail polish. The word "daughter" echoes through the cavernous space, bouncing off marble walls and crystal fixtures until it seems to come from everywhere at once. Guests exchange confused glances, their minds struggling to process the impossible mathematics of what they've just heard. The elegant bride and the desperate beggar, connected by blood in ways that social status was supposed to make irrelevant. The implications hit different people at different speeds, but when understanding finally dawns, it brings with it a horror that no amount of champagne can wash away. Kemi's hands move protectively to cradle her pregnant belly, but her gaze never wavers from Amara's face, and in that sterilized decades of watching from afar, of sacrificing everything for a child who has just revealed herself to be capable of unconscionable cruelty. "You kicked your own mother," she continues, her voice now carrying the weight of prophecy, "and the child she carries, your brother or sister, who will grow up knowing what kind of person their sibling really is." The words land like physical blows, each revelation more devastating than the last, and several guests actually stagger as if they've been struck. The perfect wedding has become a courtroom where justice wears tattered clothing and gilt dresses in designer silk, and everyone present has become both witness and jury to a trial that none of them wanted to attend. The bride's face cycles through emotions too quickly to process: confusion, denial, rage, and underneath it all, a growing terror as pieces of her perfectly constructed identity begin crumbling like a house of cards in a hurricane. Her mouth opens and closes without sound, her voice stolen by the magnitude of what she's learning about herself, while her guests watch her composure disintegrate in real time. The music, which has been playing throughout this entire confrontation, suddenly seems impossibly loud and inappropriately cheerful, like laughter at a funeral, and someone finally has the presence of mind to signal for it to stop. The resulting silence is deafening, broken only by the sound of Amara's ragged breathing and the distant hum of air conditioning that can't cool the heat of shame radiating from every corner of the room. Kemi steps forward, her movement causing a ripple of tension through the crowd as people unconsciously back away, creating a circle around mother and daughter that feels sacred and terrible at the same time. 25 years ago, she continues, her voice now tender with memory and sharp with pain, I held you in my arms and made the hardest decision of my life, to give you to a family who could provide everything I couldn't. I watched you grow from a distance, celebrated your successes as if they were my own, and dreamed of the day when I could tell you how proud I was of the woman you'd become. Her words paint a picture of sacrifice so profound that several guests begin to weep openly, their own comfortable lives suddenly feeling hollow in comparison to this woman's love. The contrast between Kemi's devotion and Amara's cruelty becomes a judgment that weighs on everyone present. As understanding finally penetrates Amara's shock, her perfectly applied makeup begins to run with tears that she doesn't even realize she's shedding, creating dark tracks down her cheeks, like the evidence of her soul's corruption made visible. Her legs give out, and she sinks onto a nearby chair, her expensive gown pooling around her like spilled milk, while her hands shake with the magnitude of what she's just learned about herself. The guests watch this transformation with a mixture of fascination and horror, seeing their own capacity for cruelty reflected in the bride's downfall, wondering how many of their own comfortable assumptions about worth and status have been built on similar foundations of deliberate ignorance. The woman who kicked a pregnant beggar is gone, replaced by someone who must somehow live with the knowledge that she has just assaulted the person who loved her enough to give her life itself, twice. The reckoning has only just begun, and everyone in that room knows that nothing will ever be the same again. The revelation hits the crowd like lightning striking still water, sending shockwaves through the carefully assembled gathering of Lagos's elite as whispered conversations explode into urgent, desperate exchanges of disbelief and horror. Designer-clad women clutch their pearl necklaces and gold jewelry as if holding onto physical anchors in a world that has suddenly tilted off its axis, while men in custom-tailored suits loosen their ties as the air becomes thick with collective guilt and recognition. The mathematical impossibility they've just witnessed, a bride kicking her own mother, transforms from shocking entertainment into a mirror that reflects their own complicity in a social system that treats poverty as moral failure. Champagne glasses sit forgotten on tables as guests struggle to process not just what they've seen, but what it reveals about the world they've built around themselves, brick by callous brick. "That cannot be possible," hisses Mrs. Adebayo, one of Lagos's most prominent socialites, her voice sharp with a kind of denial that comes from a lifetime of believing that social status creates an impermeable barrier between the worthy and the worthless. She clutches her husband's arm with manicured fingers that have never known manual labor, her eyes darting between Kemi and Amara, as if looking hard enough might reveal this to be an elaborate hoax designed to disturb their comfortable assumptions. Around her, other guests nod with the desperate agreement of people trying to preserve a worldview that's crumbling in real time, their voices rising in pitch as they insist that such things simply don't happen in their circles, that there must be some mistake, some explanation that doesn't require them to examine their own hearts. But even as they speak, their eyes tell a different story, the recognition of truth that cuts deeper than any lie ever could. The younger generation of guests, children of oil executives and tech entrepreneurs who've grown up assuming their privilege is natural and permanent, stare at their phones as they realize this moment is being recorded, that their reactions to witnessing cruelty are being documented for a world that will judge them based on how they respond to a pregnant woman being assaulted. Some quickly delete photos and videos, as if erasing the evidence might undo the moral weight of what they've witnessed, while others share the footage with shaking hands, understanding instinctively that they're broadcasting not just Amara's downfall, but their own participation in a system that creates such brutal divides between human beings. The hashtags begin forming in their minds even as their hearts struggle to process the magnitude of what money and status have cost them in basic human decency. An elderly woman near the back of the crowd, Mama Folake, whose weathered hands and knowing eyes speak of decades spent navigating both poverty and prosperity, shakes her head with the weary recognition of someone who's seen this story play out countless times in countless variations. "The ancestors are not pleased," she murmurs to anyone who will listen, her voice carrying the weight of traditional wisdom that wealth has taught the younger generation to dismiss as superstition. Her words ripple through the crowd, awakening half-forgotten memories of grandparents who warned about the dangers of forgetting where you come from, of letting success corrupt your connection to the community that raised you. The older guests begin to shift uncomfortably, remembering their own humble beginnings and the promises they made to stay connected to their roots, promises that expensive clothes and exclusive venues have slowly eroded. The bride's new husband stands frozen at the head table, his face cycling through emotions too complex for his privileged mind to process, as he watches the woman he just married reveal herself to be capable of unconscionable cruelty toward her own mother. His family members whisper urgently among themselves, their voices carrying the sharp edge of people calculating reputational damage and wondering if annulment papers can be filed before the story hits social media. They invested heavily in this alliance, banking on Amara's beauty and social connections to elevate their own status, but the woman now sobbing on the floor bears no resemblance to the poised socialite they thought they were gaining as a daughter-in-law. The mathematics of social climbing suddenly seem much more complicated when moral bankruptcy becomes part of the equation. Security guards who moments ago were ready to physically remove Kemi now stand paralyzed by the complexity of a situation that no training manual could have prepared them for. Do you arrest a mother for disturbing the peace at her own daughter's wedding, or do you detain a bride for assaulting her pregnant parent? Their radios crackle with confused messages from supervisors who are watching the scene unfold on security monitors, equally baffled by the protocol for handling a crisis that seems to require social workers and therapists more than law enforcement. The normal rules of their exclusive world: keep out the poor, protect the rich, maintain the illusion of superiority, have become meaningless in the face of biological truth that makes their jobs suddenly absurd. Children who were running freely through the reception hall now cling to their parents' expensive clothes, their innocent eyes wide with the kind of confusion that comes from watching adults behave in ways that contradict everything they've been taught about kindness and family. Their questions: why did the pretty lady hurt the pregnant woman? Why is everyone crying? Cut through the adult rationalizations and defenses like tiny swords of truth, forcing their parents to confront explanations they're not prepared to give. The fairy tale they've built around wealth and success has just been revealed as a story that can turn dark without warning, and the children who should be laughing at this celebration are instead learning lessons about human nature that no private school curriculum includes. As the reality sinks in that they've all witnessed something that will change them forever, the party continues around them like a ghost celebration, music playing for people who no longer know how to dance. Mama Dunny, whose 87-year-old eyes have witnessed more family secrets than most people experience in several lifetimes, pushes through the crowd with the determination of someone who recognizes that destiny has chosen this moment for revelation. Her traditional wrapper rustles against her aged legs as she approaches Mrs. Obinna, Amara's adoptive mother, with hands that shake not from age, but from the weight of truth that can no longer be contained. The elderly woman's face carries the burden of knowledge that she's kept locked away for decades, watching a family build their happiness on foundations of deliberate forgetting, and now the time for silence has ended. Her voice, when she speaks, carries the authority of someone who helped orchestrate the very lie that's about to be exposed, and every word feels like a nail being driven into the coffin of comfortable deception that has sustained this family for 25 years. "Fund me," she whispers to Mrs. Obinna, using the familiar name that only oldest friends dare speak, her weathered fingers gripping the other woman's silk-clad arm with surprising strength. "You know who that woman is." "We both know." The words hit Mrs. Obinna like physical blows, causing her perfectly composed face to crumble as memories she spent decades suppressing come rushing back with the force of a tsunami. Her expensive jewelry suddenly feels heavy against her throat as she realizes that the comfortable lie she's built her family's happiness upon is about to be stripped away in front of 300 witnesses, each one now positioned to judge not just Amara's cruelty, but her own complicity in creating the circumstances that made such heartlessness possible. Her breathing becomes shallow and rapid, the kind of panic that comes from watching your entire world tilt sideways and knowing there's nothing you can do to stop the avalanche. Mrs. Obinna's mind races backward through 25 years of careful construction, remembering the desperate young woman who came to her door with a newborn baby and a request that seemed like a miracle at the time, a solution to her own inability to conceive and the young mother's inability to provide. She remembers signing papers that legally erased Kemi from Amara's life, paying lawyers to ensure that biological bonds could never challenge economic ones, and most painfully, she remembers the monthly envelopes of money sent through intermediaries to keep the birth mother comfortable but distant. The arrangement seemed perfect at the time, a sterile transaction that gave everyone what they needed while avoiding the messy complications of actual relationships. Now, watching Kemi bleed from her daughter's assault, Mrs. Obinna realizes that some bonds can't be severed with legal documents, and some secrets demand recognition regardless of how inconvenient their timing might be. "That woman," Mama Dunny continues, her voice growing stronger as truth demands its moment, "carried your daughter for 9 months, labored for 18 hours to bring her into this world, and kissed her goodbye with tears that could have filled the Lagos lagoon. She's been working as a house girl and street cleaner for 25 years, sending half of every penny she earned to ensure Amara had music lessons and private schools and everything else that money could buy. The details tumble out like water breaking through a dam, each revelation more devastating than the last, as the full scope of sacrifice and love becomes clear to everyone within hearing. Guests who moments ago dismissed Kemi as worthless now realize they're looking at someone whose love for her child surpasses anything their own privileged lives have ever demanded of them, and the comparison makes their comfortable assumptions about worthiness crumble like sandcastles in a storm. The crowd parts instinctively as Mrs. Obinna stumbles toward where Kemi still stands, her designer shoes clicking against marble floors that suddenly seem to stretch for miles, each step taking her closer to a confrontation she's dreaded for decades. Her face shows the kind of guilt that comes from knowing you've built your happiness on someone else's sacrifice, and the mathematics of emotional debt that can never truly be repaid. She stops just out of arm's reach of the woman who gave birth to her daughter, and the silence between them carries the weight of 25 years of deliberate avoidance, monthly payments that were meant to substitute for acknowledgement, and the kind of love that society teaches us can be bought and sold like any other commodity. When she finally speaks, her voice breaks with the recognition that no amount of money can undo the cruelty they've all just witnessed. Kemi, Mrs. Obinna whispers, the name falling from her lips like a confession. I never wanted, we never thought. But the words die in her throat because there are no explanations that can justify watching your adopted daughter assault her biological mother. No rationalization that can make comfortable silence seem like anything other than moral cowardice. The woman who has spent decades telling herself that providing financial support was equivalent to doing right by the birth mother now faces the reality that she helped create a monster, someone so disconnected from basic human decency that she could kick a pregnant woman and feel righteous about it. The guests watch this reckoning with the fascination of people witnessing a car crash in slow motion, understanding that they're seeing the moment when carefully constructed lies finally collapse under the weight of their own contradictions.